Our next guest also writes that the shortage in chips could trigger a national security concern. NZS Capital co-founder Brad Slingerland joins us now. Brad, first on Qualcomm, it's an interesting quarter because their chipset business, we're talking Snapdragon, we're talking 5G, their own technology that they build into chips, outperformed, did quite well. It's just that in the smartphone chip business overall, the past 3 months, the next 3 months, falling a bit light of analysts' expectations. What do you think this says about the smartphone and 5G environment?
Well, I think we're in a transition period going from 4G phones to 5G phones. There's always a lot of lumpiness. I remember going back from 2 to 2.5, GSM to Edge, 2.5 to 3G. The timing of the iPhone cycle impacts when a lot of advertising is going on for 5G. The carriers are spending a lot of money on spectrum here in the U.S. It's being deployed around the world. We're just sort of in the lumpy period of deployment. Long term, I think it's very clear 5G is an evolution of wireless technology. It brings low latency, higher bandwidth. It's going to open up new applications for the Internet of Things, connected devices. We're going to see a lot more AI out at the edge as opposed to in at the cloud. We're going to see just a lot of great applications coming. And it's just one of the mega themes creating demand for semiconductors overall, which is why we're seeing such tight demand across the entire semiconductor supply chain right now, which we think is an important issue that the United States needs to work with partners around the world to address.
Part of what's so interesting about this moment, and even as you describe it, the demand for chips, not only globally, but for chips manufactured in the U.S., is what Intel is going through. New CEO coming in, momentarily at Intel, questions about how much they should focus on manufacturing, but there's no U.S. chip manufacturer that's more invested than Intel, and you're saying, it seems, that it's in the national security interest for the U.S. to build up more chip manufacturing. What do you think Intel should do now? What should policymakers do now when it comes to Intel?
That's right. So, we certainly see GM shutting more production lines down this week. Having cars not manufactured is a bit of an annoyance, but if we can't get critical chips we need for fighter jets, military applications, artificial intelligence applications that the economy is increasingly running on, it's a big problem. Intel is, as you say, one of the largest, three largest manufacturers of chips in the world. They're still on the leading edge. They've stumbled for 3 to 4 years now. Pat Gelsinger coming in should really improve the situation at Intel, hopefully breathe some oxygen back into what was a once great and innovative engineering culture. And the world simply can't go on without Intel. They have such a high share of compute, but we're going to see a lot more types of chips that we need, whether it's ARM-based processors. The big cloud companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, are developing their own chips. But outside of Intel, most of these are made by TSMC in Taiwan, Samsung in South Korea, and the U.S. really lacks the infrastructure it needs. And we propose that the U.S. actually get together with these companies that are designing these chips, that rely on these chips, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, all of these, NVIDIA, Qualcomm is one of them, and build $100 billion of capacity on U.S. soil. We need to start today. It'll take a decade, and that will diversify the supply chain, de-risk the supply chain, and ensure that partners in the West have the supply that they need to keep the economy running. Because the economy now runs on semiconductors. We are transitioning to a digital economy, and if we don't have these chips, we're in trouble.
So, Brad, tell us a little bit more about this proposed joint venture. You mentioned $100 billion. It'll take 10 years. How does this start to come together? I mean, you want to have everyone involved in it, from Intel to Apple, Amazon, and Google. Who could be the one to put that together?
Well, I think it needs to be a joint effort, and we need to rely on technology from TSMC and Samsung. TSMC out of Taiwan has announced a fab in Arizona. Samsung already has capacity in Austin. Both companies will be adding leading edge capacity in the U.S., but it's a very small percentage. The U.S. produces around 10%, 12% of global chips right now. And that number will come down if we don't add this capacity here. And these companies have a lot to lose. Apple relies almost exclusively on semiconductors made in one spot in Taiwan. And TSMC is an incredible company. But if something were to happen there, there's effectively, we could possibly go years without Apple being able to ship iPhones or iPads. And so it really is an existential situation for the United States. We need to come together. The government needs to back it. Intel should be part of it. Micron is another great chip manufacturer based here in the U.S. Likely Europe should be involved with this. They have the same vulnerabilities themselves. But what we would hate to see is 5 or 10 years go by, the risk escalate more and more between the East and the West, and nothing have been done here in the United States to address these vulnerabilities.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.